Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome back to another episode of the Networking RX podcast. I'm Frank Agan, your host and the founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections, which is an organization whose mission is to help small business America become more successful through networking. Again, we're growing across the country from coast to coast via franchising. If you're interested in learning more about this great franchise opportunity, contact me using the email provided in the show notes or at the end of the podcast. Enough on this for now. We have lots to cover today. Several years ago, I published a book, my first book, Foundational Networking. Through it, I wanted to change the way people thought about networking, change the way people approach networking, and dramatically improve what they got from networking. It is a book about networking, but not a book about networking skills. You see, networking skills have a limited ability to serve you. This limitation doesn't mean that you need to develop more networking skills, different networking skills, or even be better at the networking skills that you have. The networking skills you have are more than adequate. The limitation of networking skills, however, is just a simple fact that your skills in networking or anything can only do so much for you. What's important, however, are your attitudes and habits towards the people around you, and yourself and your situation in life, past, present, and future. It's these attitudes and habits that serve as a basis upon which your networking skills operate. The book is about what I call foundational networking. Foundational networking is the process of building know, like, and trust into your network. Foundational networking allows you to make the most of the networking skills you have or will develop. More or less, the book is about, foundational networking was about attitudes and habits. While the book is about attitudes and habits, it's nevertheless a book about networking. Foundational networking is about finding lasting success through networking by adopting a new mindset towards yourself and others, which would be your attitudes, and allowing that new thought pattern to manifest itself in your everyday actions, which would be your habits. Let me be clear, this episode is not going to be one giant tease to purchase a copy of Foundational Networking. If you have a copy, great. If you want a copy, it's available on Amazon or directly through AmSpirit Business Connections offices. Order one, thank you. If you aren't interested in getting the book or reading the book, that's okay too. To be honest, in time, I will cover the entire book in this podcast series. It might take me 2 or 3 years to cover everything, but eventually I'm going to work it all in because I think it's all important. Rather, this episode's about laying the groundwork for all those future episodes. This episode's to allow me to explain that I view successful networking as being so much more than having great networking skills. Why? For substantially more time than I've done anything else, I've worked to help small business America become more successful through networking. As founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections, I'm someone who's built a business laboring in the so-called networking trenches. My days are spent educating and empowering entrepreneurs, sales reps, and professionals to become more successful by establishing and developing productive networking relationships. On the networking front, I've worked directly with hundreds of small business types in almost every imaginable line of business, which would include, just to scratch the surface, attorneys, accountants, mortgage lenders, financial advisors, realtors, insurance agents, and bankers. In addition, I've worked with people at various levels of corporate America, including those who've experienced downsizing and job elimination. Finally, I've trained and empowered dozens of people who are involved in AmSpirit Business Connections, as well as many franchisees. On a daily basis, I have a first-hand view of what works and what does not work in relation to networking. In addition, I hear a great many stories, networking stories, about successes and failures. Through these experiences, I've seen and heard people with great networking skills who are completely frustrated by their networking efforts. Their efforts appear to be returning fewer benefits than they would be expecting. At the same time, I see and hear of people with at best marginal skills experiencing phenomenal networking results. While these observations were perplexing to me at first, I made a closer examination to this seemingly inconsistent situation. Through examining research and reading books on human interaction, business relations, and group dynamics, as well as participating in programs on similar topics, it became clear to me what was occurring. Quite simply, people's networking skills were a whole lot less important than their attitudes and habits towards themselves and people around them. While this was perplexing at first, as I got to know the situation, it made more sense to me. As I observed how people were interacting, how they were talking, what they were saying, it just made a whole lot more sense. It all related back to their attitudes and their habits. The people with great skills and frustrating results had some sort of deficiency relative to their foundational networking. Somehow or another, it turned out that they had a poor attitude towards themselves or the people around them, and this was carrying over into their habits for interacting with others. The greatest of networking skills will not and cannot compensate for the fact that few people knew them, liked them, or trust them. Alternatively, there were those with the marginal networking skills, people who really enjoyed incredible results simply because of superior foundational networking. While their networking skills may have been lacking, they more than overcame this deficiency by the mere fact that a great many people knew them, liked them, and trusted them. Quite frankly, their marginal networking skills had minimal impact on the networking results. I freely acknowledge that skills are important. I have, however, discovered that foundational networking is far more imperative to success than any or all of the networking skills you could ever learn. No doubt there are tons of books, tapes, programs, seminars, and podcasts on networking skills. I've taken in many, and you probably have too. They offer insight into the skills necessary to meet new people, carry a conversation, and follow up after the fact. These teachings suggest an endless list of other skills that you assume would serve to surround you with legions of others who couldn't help but raise you to new heights. Don't get me wrong, skills are important. Without skills, your networking success will not reach its potential. But skills alone are not enough, however. To truly be a great networker, to truly have networking success, you need to combine your networking skills with certain other intangible attributes, attitudes, and habits that focus on building know, like, and trust. As for the various materials available on networking success, the authors certainly mention the importance of know, like, and trust. They fail to address how to build it, though. Generally, the discussion in the vast majority of these materials, not all, but many, is a mere passing, such as to be successful in networking, it's important that people know, like, and trust you. Whether or not these authors are aware of the attitudes and habits that build know, like, and trust is unclear. What is clear is that anything related to what I term as foundational networking is beyond the scope of their material. Their primary aim is to devote their material to networking skills, as if there's nothing more. However, there is more. There's so much more. While skills are important to networking success, attitudes and habits build know, like, and trust, which is vital. Simply stated, if people don't know you, like you, and trust you, then it doesn't matter how adept you are with respect to networking skills. Without a solid base of know, like, and trust built by your attitudes and habits, your networking skills will fail you every time. Compare this to the concept of a house. A house has two basic aspects. The first is everything above the ground. That would include the floor, the walls, the roof, the windows, the doors, and everything else you can see. These are important aspects of any house. Without any of these, you don't have much of a shelter. The second basic aspect is the foundation. It's the combination of concrete and cement block that the contractors build below the ground. The first thing that any contractor establishes when building a house is the foundation. Nothing else happens until the contractor gets that done. On top of the foundation, a contractor will place a floor, and upon the floor, the contractor will set the walls and build everything else. Following this proven building sequence, a house will last for decades, if not hundreds of years. You can build a house without a foundation, but without the foundation, the house will only last a few short years, if that long. Without a firmly anchored foundation, the floor will shift. Once the floor shifts, the walls move to compensate. When the walls move, the windows breaks and the doors become jammed, open, or stuck shut. Once the walls have moved, the roof loses all support and no longer has structural integrity. Yes, everything above the ground is important to make the house a livable shelter. The foundation, however, is imperative to the long-term viability of a house. Your true networking potential is much like a house. Your networking skills are analogous to everything above the ground. Just as a house will not last without a strong foundation, your networking skills alone, no matter how proficient, will not ensure networking success. To reach your true networking potential, you need to set your networking skills upon a solid foundation. This foundation is being known, liked, and trusted. Without this foundation, as with a house, even the most perfected networking skills will not result in effective networking. Yes, throughout this podcast series, we will and have touched on networking skills. But this podcast series has and will continue to have a heavy emphasis on foundational networking, which again is exploring and developing the attitudes and habits to build know, like, and trust. To dig a little deeper, what is know, like, and trust? Certainly we can come up with almost two apparent descriptions for each, and we covered that in episode 5. However, these terms and their respective descriptions are an indication of the end result and do nothing to address how you get there. For example, why do people want to know you, and what do they want to know about you? What causes them to like you, or what would cause them to dislike you? How do you generate trust with others? In working to build each of these foundational networking results, know, like, and trust, there are many underlying traits and characteristics upon which to focus your attitudes and habits. Let's take trust, for example. It's evident that you develop trust through demonstrating reliability, honesty, and trustworthiness. Therefore, through foundational networking, you need to embark on a course to alter your attitudes and adopt habits that make you, or at least make you seem more reliable, honest, and trustworthy. For foundational networking, all these traits and characteristics can be broken down into 3 basic categories or components: presence, altruism, and integrity. The presence components of foundational networking involves your attitudes and habits towards how you carry yourself and how you appear to others. In part, it involves your contentment with your life and your optimism for the future, your resiliency to overcome or working through setbacks and adversity. It deals with your courage to take on challenges and explore new experiences. The altruism component of foundational networking involves all your attitudes and habits related to your disposition towards contributing to the lives of those around you. In part, it involves your tendency to be generosity with your resources, contacts, and talents, your eagerness to show appreciation for things that others have done for you, your propensity to have compassion for others and their situations, and your willingness to praise others for their achievements, complimenting them for their desirable attributes, and perhaps encouraging them to press on. Finally, the integrity component of foundational networking includes your attitudes and habits with respect to how you interact with others. In part, it involves your conviction to treat others fairly and honestly, your commitment to being unwaveringly dependable and reliable, your sincerity in recognizing your own fault, apologizing for them, sharing praise with others. In summary, foundational networking is the process of building know, like, and trust in your network. You do this whenever you focus on the attitudes and habits that serve to 1. Improve your presence, 2. Enhance your altruism, and 3. Bolster your integrity. Certainly at this point, some of you are concluding that foundational networking is not about networking, rather it's about being a good citizen of the world. That's the point. Being a good citizen of the world, as manifested in your presence, altruism, and integrity, is imperative in building know, like, and trust, which, again, is vital to networking success. Believe this, if you commit to embarking on a regimen of foundational networking, you'll enjoy long-term networking success. If you combine your networking, your foundational networking, those attitudes and habits, with the continued development of networking skills, really the sky's the limit. Again, this episode is not intended to sell books. If you've got a copy of Foundational Networking, great. If you want to purchase one, great. If you don't, that's okay too. This episode is intended to give you a sense as to how and why I view networking as broadly as I do. And this episode is intended to give you some background as to why we're going to touch on a really diverse cross-section of topics throughout the Networking RX podcast. It's all done in the name of us becoming more successful through networking.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.